Good evening, all. I am privileged today to serve everyone here with the knowledge and with my experience on early intervention. Now, being a cochlear implant surgeon, this cochlear implant actually came to me with an asterisk. So when I actually noticed that my patient, all of my patient had the similar potential of language development, but there was something that was disturbing to me. And after implanting, there were kids who were able to do talking and reading like their peers, but there were others at the same time who were barely able to communicate, and it was an incredibly painful difference. The question that came to me was that why such a thing is happening? Am I going wrong somewhere? This made me to step out of my operation theater into this field of early intervention. And it is indeed a long journey with experience that now I understand this cochlear implantation axis were the sounds that child is supposed to hear at the right age. But something was needed to make this miracle a reality, and that is words. It's most important, the words. So today we are talking about this early intervention. It is of utmost importance to understand that we keep saying the hearing loss is an emergency, and hearing loss is one of the disabilities. There are other disabilities associated with it or maybe without it. It's like blindness, it's autism, it's hyperactivity, we call it ADHD, there is cerebral palsy, and hearing loss is the second most commonest disability around. So it is very important to act at the right time. Just we take for an example that we have someone, loved one at our home who just gets in chest pain. What do we do at that time? We rush for a phone. We try to call the ambulance at the right time. We try to rush into the ICU. We want to go to the right hospital. We want to go to the right doctor. We want to be treated at the right time, because if we lose that half an hour, we may actually be sorry for the lifetime losing our loved one. So if this time is lost, we actually lose the time of gifting our loved one with the gift of hearing, welcoming them into the field of these sounds. Now, why this hearing loss is called an emergency? So we need to understand that there is an association between the child age at the implantation and the outcomes. And there are a lot of studies suggesting substantial benefit, both speech and the vocabulary outcomes, which has a lot of impact on our child communication, academic skills, and the social development. When a child is born, this brain, the infant brain, is already pre-programmed. It is just like a computer. The more you use this computer, you become more computer savvy. You can actually getting fine tuning. So there are areas in the brain which are having sound attention, having the localization areas, and we have this auditory system having this ear, and then there's inner ear inside, and we have the nerve which takes the signals to the brain. This auditory system needs stimulation to mature at the right time. And if it is not done at the right time, the child will lose its memory, it will lose its power to discriminate between the words and its cognition abilities. So then we see a child with comprehending gestures, we see a child with lip reading, we see a child with sign language. So it is very important to keep talking to the child, which can lead to the rapid development of the language and the vocabulary growth. Now this is a beautiful slide showing that hearing begins in womb. And now we're moving on that how this hearing, the brain plays a very important part. Brain is a computer. There is a system here which actually helps in your hearing. And we have seen again, taking to some examples of the which we can relate on television, that we see a lot of ads, showing that the Bonvita ads or the Horlick drinks or some special drinks which actually tell the development takes in the first few years of life, and we love to get these drinks into our home, and we actually, all of us must be giving it to our kids because we want that brain to develop at the right time before 5 years of age in the right fashion. Why are we doing it? So the first 3 years of life, 85% of the brain development takes place. It is 100 billion neurons which are developing at that time, and there are 700 neural connections are made every second. Believe me, there is no other time of the life will be there such a rapid growth which will help in your memory, which will help in your child language growth and fine and gross motor skills. This is what is called neuroplasticity. It is the brain ability to learn the new skills easily. Then after this few initial years of life, the brain prunes itself slowly. Now, what is this pruning? Let me give you an example. When a calf is born, it starts walking immediately. Not like our child who walks at 1 year of age, they start walking immediately. But if you will, just tie the legs of the calf with a thread for months together and you open them after 1 year or 2 years, that calf will never walk. Why has it happened that way? Because brain understood this part was not stimulated, so it has gone into the non-essential areas. It has been deprived of stimulation. Now we cannot stimulate it enough and the calf cannot walk. This is what the brain prunes itself after the few initial years of life when we don't stimulate the areas. It is never too late as parents to think for implantation, but believe me, it is significantly harder if it gets late. Implanting a child at 8 months, 6 months of age, and implanting a child at 3 years of age is a lifetime difference. The earlier it is, the kids will have a larger time of usage of these implants as compared to the same age peers. Now, let's take an example. There are two kids born at the same time. They've been diagnosed with profound hearing loss at the same time, but one family chooses to go for surgery at 8 months, 6 months, or 1 year of age, and other chooses to wait till 2.5 to 3 years of age. What will happen? The child who was intervened early will definitely have accelerated growth, will have stronger outcomes, will have stronger receptive and expressive vocabulary scores, whereas this child who was implanted late will have neurological changes in the brain due to the auditory deprivation. The earlier the child is exposed to the sounds in different language, it is easier for our brain to learn different languages. The early it is, the potential of your cognitive learning and the verbal speech is at its peak. And believe me, we have only one time to build it right. Now, when we're talking about this brain, we should also know that hearing is also one of these senses. We have other senses also, as we see on this slide. But to be very specific how this hearing sense work, let's take an example of a taste sense. So many of you would be eating a kind of food which I will not like. And what I am eating, the Japanese what I like, and what Japanese are eating, I will not like. Why it is so? It is so our taste buds are developed in our childhood because of the different food we taste, which is not possible in adulthood because we may reject it immediately. Hearing is also one of these kind of senses, and hearing sense, once it gets affected, it is also other senses are also gets affected around with it. And it is very important to hear because we want to get connected to our loved ones, we want to get connected to a child, we want to get connected to our other family members. When a child is born to the family, we actually wait for that time to come when a child will first speak the two words, ma and pa, and that is the happiest moment in our life. So why do we lose it? Now, talking about this hearing as senses, we will also talk about here that how this sense, this hearing sense in the brain helps us in learning new skills. Now we've already talked about the ability to brain to learn new things in the early childhood. We did a study in Tara Foundation about the critical period initiative, where these kids were enrolled into this intervention program, where few kids with along with other disabilities were also they required extra support. So like behavior therapy, occupation therapy, everything was provided under one roof. These kids were identified early and they were fitted with hearing aids. Those who couldn't afford hearing aids, they were provided through our hearing aid bank and they had gone for a pre-implant therapy, which is important for the child to learn that he's going to have a machine placed outside and for the family to understand the importance of therapy. And these kids who were enrolled into a study into this critical period initiative, we found that they achieved more academically. They had better language skills. They had very easy time, functioning in the society. They developed confidence. They were able to manage their interaction with everyone independently and confidently. They had better cognitive abilities and they were better psychosocial developments. Similarly, the child who was implanted late at 3 years or 4 years of age, we found that child was getting very irritable. He had some behavior issues. They were frustrated more. They were angry, and it was mainly because there was a non-expression of the thoughts. Now, to summarize everything, it is very important when the child comes into life, they start hearing sounds because the auditory system gets stimulated and then this starts understanding. When they hear sound, it is important that the brain start restoring words and it stores million of words for the child to understand, which should be done at the right time. It helps in memorizing those words, it helps in child thinking, it helps in child cognition, emotions, language, and then we see one day the child will start speaking. From the monosyllabic words, it will go to bisyllabic words and to the sentences. So the earlier the child is exposed to the sounds, it's easier for the brain to understand it. It is easier for the brain to learn that language. Now there are many parents who ask this question that what is the ideal age for implantation? Now, according to me, there is no ideal age for implantation. You have to act as soon as you come to know your child has profound deafness. The early it is better for the listening and the communication skills in the noisy situation. This what we have learned in our critical period initiative, so we don't have to lose time. Now, while doing this study, we found out that we were not able to reach to the masses. And there were a lot of families living in outskirts, in villages, in different talukas who were completely unaware of this, that my child could be deaf, because we have in our mind, the child walks at 1 and talks at 2. So we don't want to bother before 2 years of age that is this any kind of a problem. So there is a recommended protocol that at the time of the birth, the hearing should be tested within 1 month of age. And if this test, this is called OE testing, if it fails, the child should again be tested at 3 months of age. And if that again fails, this should go for confirmation by 6 months by beta testing. Now here I would like to say one thing. When we were doing all this, I really had to make the Gujarat government understand that this newborn hearing screening is as important as giving a polio vaccine to the child. Whether the child gets handicapped in the lower limb or in the brain or having a hearing disability, actually the child is getting handicapped and will not be able to live a normal life. So why are we not doing it? So the government came with a new universal newborn hearing screening. They made it mandatory. So any child now born in any district hospital, any talukas or anywhere will have to undergo this testing at the right time. Whether they are NICU babies, whether they're coming for vaccination at the time of the delivery, they have to get this testing done so we can intervene early. That critical peer initiative, in doing that critical peer initiative, the child learns to speak at the right time. Now, what happens when we choose to wait? There are many families who come to us and they tell us that, can we wait? A child is very small. Or they say, our grandparents are saying that we should wait, the child is small, something will happen, if the knife is put, if something goes wrong, there are a lot of fears. So now let me give you an example here. There is a home with books and there is a home that is without books. So the home which having books, the child in that home will be enriched with words, where the home without books, the child will have no vocabulary or language development. And there will be a critical gap between these two kids, which will mark the beginning of the terrible cycle where this child in the home with no vocabulary or language development, will literacy and education will be badly affected, and he'll be dependent on others for the information and the facts. Now here we are looking at a slide where they're showing, you see a blue area, which is a visual cortex. You see a yellow area, it is an auditory cortex. It is like a computer, like a computer, you have your desktop, you have your documents, you have your OneDrive, and you store different kind of information at different places and which can be recollected when you want it. It is just the same way the brain works. It collects everything at different places. The visual areas, their hearing areas is auditory, so we can recollect. Now what happens if you don't use it, if you don't stimulate this yellow area at the right time? So we see this yellow area as a piece of land lying unused, where there are a lot of people staying around, a lot of areas around where the areas are being used. What we see, a piece of land which is lying empty, you will slowly and slowly see that people around will encroach it by centimeter and centimeter, your piece of land. If you don't try to fence it, you don't safeguard it, you don't use it. So we see this blue area encroaching that yellow area, but we don't realize it. The landlord will never realize it. The area has been encroached till the time it has been fully encroached. And we realize it when a child gets into lip reading, a child gets into sign language, when the child is not following commands, when the child is not coming back when he listens your name, then there is a signal here, what's wrong? And that is, you have lost it. You have lost that time because there's an encroachment already taken up. Now, when we're talking with this encroachments and we don't want it to happen, so we have to intervene early, and we have already seen the benefits when we intervene early. So just to summarize again, what are the benefits of early intervention? Important thing is, the first foremost is we have to stimulate this auditory system, and this will give you a better hearing and a spoken language. Second, there will be increased chance of mainstream school. Now, when we talk about school, naturally, all of us want our children to go to pre-primary school at 3 years of age. They should be going into first class by 5 years old. We all want a normal life. But if we don't intervene early, this is from my experience that I have seen that if we don't intervene early, there are few kids which get stuck up at one word. There are few kids at 3 words. There are few kids who are able to speak sentences, but only repeating what the parents are speaking. They are not communicating. So what is this communication? Communication is that what you are seeing here, that I am talking to you, you're able to hear, you understand. At the same time, you go into a thinking process and you ask me a question again. This is communication, and we want these hearing impaired kids to be able to communicate like the way we are communicating. So when they intervene early from 0 to 2 years of age, there's maximum chance of 70 to 80% of them attending this mainstream school, communicating like us, as compared to the kids who have been implanted late by 4 years or 7 years. So we need to act early. Coming to the benefits and summarizing it, we've already seen that we need to have a better hearing, spoken language, there's increased chance of mainstream schooling. We need a child to have an overall personality development. That will only happen means all the senses are working together. And we want a child to have a better quality of life. He should be independent on his own. So we don't want to miss the bus. So earlier the intervention is easier for our brain to learn and adapt to things. So then the bus, we have to go, what do we want? We want a child to go to the school bus and should be able to go to the school normally. When will this happen? This will only happen when you are intervening at the right age. So it's important to act and act now. Thank you.